Here goes a new YouTube video on Scott Ball, and today, ahead of the international against Japan, a friendly game at Hampden Park, I thought it would be cool to chat a little bit around the context of the match, and then also delve into the starting 11 I would like to see from Steve Clarke for the game. So yeah, initially surrounding the match, it's a cool opponent to play. Scotland have only played Japan on 3 previous occasions, 2 draws and 1 defeat. And yeah, although we're not facing any teams from Japan's federation in the World Cup, I do think it'll be a good test in terms of coming up against an unfamiliar opponent, having to adapt on the spot and find different solutions. So yeah, I think it's a cool, friendly match for everybody to go and watch. I'm excited to see the team in action. It's been a while since that unforgettable night against Denmark. And yeah, I'm also excited to see them in the new away strip, which has been very popular on social media. So yeah, regarding Japan, I think it's going to be a difficult test. If I was to rank Japan, from a A, B, C, D lettering system alongside Scotland, I would probably put Japan as a B tier nation and Scotland in C. Primarily just looking at recent international context. Japan are been regulars at the World Cup. I believe they've been in every World Cup since 1998, which ironically is the last time Scotland were even there. And yeah, just in recent World Cups, I've been very impressed by them. I was chatting with a Japanese football expert, Tiago Bontempo, and he spoke about how ambitious Japan are as a football nation, that they're reaching for the stars, have set themselves a target by 2050 to win the World Cup. And I was saying to them that in the last 10, 15 years, I've been really impressed by the progression of football in Japan. When they've played in the World Cups, they play really slick passing football, energy all across the pitch. And in that 2022 World Cup, they topped the group with Spain and Germany. I thought that was a real sign of the progress in Japan. But having said that, they do have a lot of key absentees for this match at Hampden. There's no Take Kubo, who is probably the most talented player in this current Japanese cohort, plays for Real Sociedad. Kaoru Mitoma, is in the squad, but he's not yet back to full fitness. I'm not sure how big a part he'll play. Wataru Endo at Liverpool is also out. Takumi Minamino, former Liverpool forward, is also out. Tomiyasu, the ex-Arsenal defender at Ajax, is out. So this isn't the best complement of Japanese players that we're playing against Scotland. And as such, before I read this injury list, and when I first saw this match was announced, I thought this is going to be a tricky game for Scotland. It's one that we would be doing well to avoid defeat, if I'm being brutally honest. But in light of those absentees, I think we should be getting at least a draw. And I'd like to think that Scotland are capable of winning this game, especially at home. And yeah, I was looking at their form, Japan. They did top their World Cup qualifying group. They had 7 wins, 2 draws and 1 loss, which was away against Australia. And their 6 friendly matches since the end of the World Cup qualifying, they've won 3, drawn 2 and 1 defeat against the USA. And included in those victories was a 3-2 win over Carlo Ancelotti's Brazil, which kind of underlines their ability to compete against the best. But yeah, within that, they have shown that they can be susceptible on the road. I was speaking to Tiago, the Japanese football expert, and they've lost the USA on the road. They drew with Mexico. They also lost Australia. And he said that perhaps a weakness of Japan is that when they go and travel to face opposition, that's when they can come undone. So that's hopefully both a good positive sign for Scotland ahead of this match. In terms of a Scottish perspective, I think a lot was made ahead of the Euro 2024 campaign, the finals campaign, that our form on the lead up to the tournament was really poor. We went on a run of 1 win in 9 matches, and that win was against Gibraltar. And there's no real momentum, and people have suggested that it's important in the lead up to this World Cup that we gather a bit of momentum. And I would go along with that. I don't think it's the be all and end all that we win these matches, but I would like to see encouraging signs and at least pick up a couple of positive results in these matches. We've got Japan, then Cote d'Ivoire, and we've got Curacao to come, and also I believe there's still another pre-tournament friendly scheduled for America. And yeah, also I think it's perhaps a bugbear of Steve Clarke that overall he's got a good record as Scotland manager, particularly in qualifying for major tournaments, but his friendly record is pretty abject. I was looking at in his 13 friendly matches as Scotland manager, he's only picked up 3 victories. So that's something that he'll be keen, I'm sure, knowing Clarke, to address in the forthcoming matches. And so yeah, looking ahead to the starting 11 I would like to see, I would just place this in an overall context, looking ahead to the 2 matches that we're playing against Japan and Cote d'Ivoire. I personally would approach the first game against Japan with a full strength selection of the players available, get the players to refamiliarise themselves amongst what is regarded as the strongest 11, get them in tune with each other. It's important in international football that you can refamiliarise with one another as often as possible, because there is these big breaks in between camps, and after this break they're not going to get together again before the World Cup squad's announced and they're preparing for the final tournament. So I would like to see the first game at Hampden, bit of a homecoming after that Denmark game, a full strength team And then sure, in the second half, make some changes, hopefully see a bit of experimentation. And in the game on Tuesday at the Everton Stadium, the Hill Dickinson Stadium, that's where I would go with a bit more of a changed experimental lineup. So with that being said, the formation I would go with is a 4-2-3-1. I think it is the primary formation that is conducive to success for us. It was our primary formation in the qualification campaign. I think it does suit our players when we have the full complement of our squad available, and we hopefully will have that for the World Cup. So might not necessarily suit this current group of players for reasons I'll explain in a bit, but I think in terms of familiarising ourselves within a system, the 4-2-3-1 is what I think we're likely to play in America, so it'd be good to get that tuned up in this friendly against Japan. So starting off in goal, I've gone with Angus Gunn. I think it's well documented that Scotland have got a problem in the goalkeeping department at the minute. We don't really have, other than Scott Bain, any goalkeepers playing at a good level consistently. I think the two keepers that will be going face to face with each other with regards to the number 1 jersey will be Craig Gordon and Angus Gunn. Obviously, unfortunately, Gordon is unavailable at the moment due to a shoulder injury. So I do believe that Angus Gunn is the best available option in comparison to Bain and Kelly. And that is without Gunn playing regular first team football, which I think is a shame. I think he made a wayward career decision last summer when he decided to go to Nottingham Forest. I think that has risked his chances of being Scotland's number 1, because right now I would have Craig Gordon as our number 1 if he is fit and available and ready to go, because I just think there's something around the narrative of this being his final hurrah, this swan song. He's a goalkeeper that can step up in big moments. We saw that particularly in that Greece game away in Piraeus, where although we did lose the match, Gordon came up with some big saves which proved that even in his veteran years, he's capable of playing at the highest level and performing for us. But for this match, I think Angus Gunn is a better goalkeeper at this moment in time than Bain and Kelly, and I think he is definitely a player that needs games, so I would have him occupying the goalkeeping position for this match. As for right back, funnily enough, this is another problematic position for the national team at the moment, because Aaron Hickey is continuing to have injury issues with Brentford, and also Nathan Patterson continues to be a bit part figure at Everton. He's not playing a lot of minutes. So yeah, Steve Clarke has a bit of a dilemma in this position, and I think the fact he's picked 3 different right backs in this squad underlines the fact that he's unsure about his current options there, and he wants to pit them against each other to see who looks in the best nick ahead of him picking his final squad. You know, he's got Patterson in there, he's got Ross McCrory of Bristol City, and also Anthony Ralston of Celtic. But funnily enough, my pick is outside of those 3, which might seem a bit daft and rogue and perhaps counterintuitive, but I personally feel that this is a position in which we should be trialling Kieran Tierney for a few different reasons. One being that, above everything else, I think Kieran Tierney is too good a player within this national pool to be a bit part figure for Scotland at the World Cup. Because naturally, Andy Robertson as the captain is going to be the first choice left back, and I'm fully behind that. He does have sometimes a few hairy moments, but he has been a great leader for this team, and he will be my first choice in that position. But at right back, there is an issue there in that even if Aaron Hickey is declared fit for the World Cup, knowing the way in which his minutes have been managed for Brentford this season at club level, I'd be very surprised if he is capable of playing 3 matches in quick succession at the World Cup. His game time will have to be carefully managed, and therefore an alternative right back will have a significant role to play. And I just feel that Tierney, as a high calibre player, is an adaptable player who has played at right back for Scotland before. Even in the recent World Cup qualification campaign, I believe he came on at right back in one of the games at Hampden. It might have been Belarus, and also famously scored the goal from the right back position, that famous winner, well, the third goal against Denmark from that right hand side. And yeah, I think he's more than capable of fulfilling this role, and I think it gives him a route into the team. And ultimately, I think good footballers are good footballers, and they're capable of adapting to different positions. We've seen Tierney play at right back before, we've seen him play centre back and a back four before, and I just think with the question marks surrounding Patterson not playing much at Everton, Ross McCrory being an option as a right back. He's a right-footed player who's played a lot of games at right back, but this season actually Bristol City is playing primarily as a wing back on both sides, but particularly as a left wing back, so it's not a natural move for him to go into a back four for Scotland as a right back. And then Anthony Ralston, who for me, he's turned up well before for Scotland, but I don't think he should be in the squad because he's not been playing consistently for Celtic, and he is arguably third or fourth choice there, so I think he's very fortunate to be in the squad altogether. So I wouldn't be satisfied with a scenario in which Ralston's our first choice, and there's part of me that's concerned he will start this match because Clarke will go with, you know, the status quo in terms of the teams and the selections he picked in the World Cup qualifiers, but for me that would be a disappointing one if he does go with Ralston. If I was a Scotland manager, I would have Kieran Tierney trialled in this position, because that's the other point I wanted to make, is that if you're ever going to experiment with something that is deemed to a certain extent a risk, such as moving Kieran Tierney to right back, now is the time to do it in friendly matches in which the results are ultimately not riding on anything. Whereas if you were to try it cold in the World Cup in a crucial group stage match, it could lead to our undoing. Moving on to the centre backs. On the right side, I'll go with John Souttar, who is having a difficult time at club level at the minute. He's been dropped by Rangers for some disappointing performances. But over the course of the last 3 or 4 years or so, I've been impressed by John Souttar as a Scotland player. I think he's been a really dependable figure at the back for Scotland. I can only really think of one particularly poor performance, the one in Piraeus against Greece, where I thought him and Hanley were both pretty poor at the back. But other than that, I think he's been reliable for us. I think he's our best centre-back on the ball, and that could be an asset for us in terms of building the ball out from the back. And he's also got that direct diagonal pass in his locker, which is a useful tool in football. So yeah, Souttar, if I'm picking the strongest available 11, I'll go with Souttar at right centre-back. Alongside him is Scott McKenna. I'd like to emphasise my opinion on Scott McKenna in that he, for me, is somebody that should go to the World Cup as a starting centre-back for Scotland. I have no issues or qualms with Grant Hanley being in the squad, because he was a big part of our qualification campaign, and I think more often than not he stood up for Scotland in terms of what he's there to do, and that is to be a no-nonsense defender, head the ball away, cleared the ball away. I think he gets a lot of unfair stick because maybe he does have weaknesses in terms of largely his ability on the ball, and I think that is an issue. Often when Hanley does play for Scotland, he's almost babysat on the ball. Gilmore or McLean or Lewis Ferguson will come very deep to pick up the ball from him, and we're basically a man down in possession, and that's not being too harsh on Hanley. I think he's a solid defender, but I just think at the highest level he isn't great in the ball, whereas Scott McKenna is better in the ball in my opinion. He's left-footed straight away, which complements John Souttar well. One right footer, one left footer. McKenna and Souttar actually played together for Scotland's under-21s. They have that understanding, and above all that, in terms of club form, which has to be a major aspect of your decision making as far as I'm concerned as national team manager, Scott McKenna's having a great season in Zagreb for Dinamo Zagreb. He started 25 of their 27 league matches. They're top of the table by 10 points in Croatia's top flight, which is a respectable standard. And yeah, I think he's just an underrated player, to be honest, McKenna. He did get some stick previously at Aberdeen. I think it's probably similarly with Hanley. Their physique, they're kind of lumbering centre-backs, but I think Scott McKenna's a good player. I saw on social media Nottingham Forest fans give him a lot of praise, looking back upon his time as a Forest player. He was actually their player of the season when they reached the Premier League, when they achieved a promotion from Championship. And since then, McKenna's gone over to the continent. He's played at some reputable clubs, Copenhagen, Las Palmas, where he played in La Liga, and now at Dinamo Zagreb, playing consistently week in, week out, also in Europe as well. So I've got no qualms with Hanley being in the World Cup squad, but for me, McKenna has to go as a starter. So if I'm picking this team on who I think it should be primed and in line to play as our strongest 11 in the World Cup, I'm going McKenna alongside Souttar. And then at left back, as I've touched upon when I was speaking about Tierney, Andy Robertson remains my first choice at left back. I think there is some valid criticism that has been levelled towards Robertson. He has taken a lot of stick from the Tartan Army at times, and overall I disagree with that, because I think he's been a tremendous servant, a great leader, and super enthusiastic about Scotland, and he's had a lot of good moments as well, which you will forget about. But I do now think at this stage in his career he can be prone to an individual error, which could cost us. Had we not finished that match against Denmark in such dramatic fashion, those goals from Tierney and McLean, a lot of people would level criticism at Robertson for what was a sloppy mistake which gave away the penalty. And I saw a Liverpool match recently against Spurs where Spurs scored a late equaliser through Richarlison, in which Robertson watches a ball come high up in the air and basically doesn't challenge for it, and it leads towards the Spurs goal. And I do think he's got that in him now, that he's increasingly error prone. So I think that's relevant to raise, but overall I've got no qualms about Robertson. I actually think he's in a good place coming to this World Cup, because he's not been the first choice at Liverpool this season. He should be fit, firing and ready to go, and yeah, he's the left back for me every day of the week. And then in the 4-2-3-1, the two deep line midfielders, first of all I'm going for Billy Gilmore. I'd have him back in the team, and this is very much a cliche in club football, never mind international football, but I think he'll feel a bit like a new signing. He'll bring a bit of a freshness because he wasn't involved towards the end of the World Cup qualifying campaign through injury, and he looks a refreshed figure from everything I see online for Napoli. He had an issue, pubalgia, which is kind of the groin area. He had surgery on that. He was out for a few months, and he's come back looking really sharp. He's getting a lot of praise from Napoli fans on social media. More often than not, I think there are certain circumstances in which Gilmour might not be suited to different games, because I do think he does struggle sometimes with his athleticism and his ability to cover the ground. But if we're playing 5 in midfield, 3 central midfielders, I think Gilmour would more often than not be in my team, because I don't think we've got an abundance of players in the Scotland team who are fully comfortable on the ball, can take the ball in tight areas and demand the ball. And Billy Gilmour is that guy. The amount of times you'll see him angling, moving for the ball, demanding it off the defenders, and he's so calm, regardless of the context of the match. His debut at Wembley against England in the Euros, where he was barely a senior footballer at Chelsea, and he got his full international debut against our biggest enemy, England. Massive pressure cooker of a match, and he was awarded man of the match in that game, and he was just taking the ball everywhere, showing real confidence and composure. And I think that's going to be important for us at the World Cup, particularly that Haiti game. There's going to be a lot of pressure on us. We're going to have more of the ball, and before we get that opening goal, hopefully, there could be nerves and tension in that team, and I just think Gilmour naturally is a player that can relieve that tension in possession, because he's so comfortable in the ball. So yeah, Gilmour's in my team. Next to him is Lewis Ferguson. So we have a combination of Gilmour and Ferguson, 2 players who, like McKenna and Suter, did play alongside each other under 21s level. And if I'm being honest with you, Ferguson, for the beginning period of his international career, I was kind of struggling to see all the hype that was surrounding him at Bologna and Serie A. And I do think his club career has actually stagnated to a certain extent the last couple of years, which is sad, because it's come off the back of that ACL injury. He's still their captain, he's still a really respected figure there, but he comes in and out of the team, and I don't think he's quite rediscovered the heights that he found before that injury. But having said that, I really did identify what he brings to the Scotland team towards the back end of that World Cup qualifying campaign. He was almost an ever-present in that qualifying campaign. I think it was only because he was suspended that he missed one match for us, but not to downplay his ability whatsoever, I identify him as the ultimate team player, an absolute dog in the middle of the park. I looked at that Denmark match in particular, which I think was his best performance in the Scotland shirt, and I looked at the stats, and he covered more ground than every Scotland player. I think there's only one Dane who covered more ground, I believe it's Isaacson. And Ferguson was just absolutely everywhere. And I think it'd be a nightmare to play against. I think one of his best assets, which again, it sounds harsh, but is his ability off the ball, and that's a huge part of football, in that he's brilliant at pressing. He'll put his opposition players under a lot of pressure because he's able to cover so much ground. And yeah, if you've got somebody like Gilmour next to him, they could complement each other well, because Ferguson is everywhere. He'll fight for every second ball. He's also very good at winning fouls, applying pressure on the opposition. He can also pop up with a goal as well on an important occasion. I know he scored that goal against Greece, which was crucial for us, and he has that in his locker dating back to his Aberdeen days. So they've not played too often as a partnership, as far as I'm aware, for Scotland, certainly in the senior ranks, Gilmour and Ferguson. So that would be the pairing I would go for in this game. In the number 10 is Scott McTominay, the talisman, the superstar now of this Scotland side. And yeah, he's now got that bit of magic in his boots that Scotland have been missing for a generation, really. I know there was some articles this week talking about Scotland being looking for their Gareth Bale, and Scott McTominay is not a Gareth Bale. He's not a superstar in that respect. Bale was scoring regularly for Real Madrid, the best team in the world, winning multiple Champions Leagues, but he's somebody that does have that superstar element attached to him, that at the World Cup you could throw your hat on McTominay coming up with the goods for us in one moment, whether that be just latching onto a loose ball in the box, whether it be a bit of magic laid over a kick. He just has that confidence and aura around him now that I've got full confidence that he'll do something special for us at the World Cup. One thing I would say about McTominay is that I would be keen to see his minutes managed in this international window. I would like to see us go with a strong team against Japan. As I said, I think rhythm, familiarity is really important for international football, because these guys don't play each other a lot, but maybe after the hour mark or so, it would be wise to bring him off. I saw that the first week of training this week at Leicester Hampden, he wasn't pictured as part of the squad, and he was doing individual work, so that underlines that there is still an underlying issue there, because he was out recently for Napoli. But from the start, I will go with McTominay at number 10 role. On the right, another talismanic figure for Scotland, John McGinn, Super John McGinn. Yeah, what can you say about John McGinn? Again, if I'm going with the strongest starting 11, he's in it every day of the week. He's somebody that, alongside McTominay, has that match-winning capability, and I do think he's somebody, especially McGinn, that, having looked back upon our previous performances at major tournaments, the last two Euros, Euro 2020 and Euro 2024, McGinn didn't really step up for us, and I think he's someone that, considering how proud he is to be a Scotland player, he's an iconic Scotland player, I think he'll want to really rise to this occasion more. He said that, looking back at the Euros, he felt a bit fatigued and he wasn't able to play at his best. So hopefully that recent injury that he picked up for Aston Villa will give him that a bit of refresh, that replenishment that means he'll be in a better place, similar to Robertson, to be really raring to go ahead of the tournament. And yeah, he'd be on the right hand side for me. On the left, I'm going Ryan Christie. And the fact I've got Christie and McGinn on the flanks underlines an issue that I've pointed out on my social media channels, that I do think there's a real dearth of wingers at the moment, wide options. But having reflected upon it, I do think in certain matches Christie can offer you something out wide. I think his best position now is the one that we see him in for Bournemouth, which is a deeper lying position. But if you assess Scotland's overall squad, we do have problems out wide, and Christie is somebody that is still capable of having a bit of ingenuity in the final third. He's creative enough to come up with assists, and he's also got an eye for goal. In the World Cup qualifiers, he scored a crucial goal against Greece at Hampden, and then also Greece away with that header, which underlined to me that even if he's playing further forward out wide, he can still be an asset for us, because, as I say, he is a difference maker as well in the final third. And just with Christie, the overriding point with me is that I think he's the type of player that it's good to find a place for regardless. I love his enthusiasm and passion for Scotland, proud Invernessian, and I just think he's one of those players that you can trust. A manager will trust that more often than not he's going to deliver a productive performance. And yeah, there's definitely issues that can be identified from having McGinn and Christie as our wide players. I would much rather have Ben Gannon Doak on one of the flanks, but I just think it's maybe a tad early to throw in Finlay Curtis from the start. He gives us an additional option on the flanks alongside Ben Gannon Doak, and I would like to see Curtis, if he does step up and show what he's capable of in these games, be in the final 26-player squad for the World Cup, because that would give us at least a bit more coverage out wide. And then finally, up front, it's Che Adams. He is a bit of a divisive figure amongst the Tartan Army. I've touched upon this as well. He can be frustrating in front of goal, but I do generally, if you look at it, the other attacking options, striking options, you've got Lyndon Dykes, George Hurst and Tommy Conway. And overall, I just think Che Adams is a better footballer than the other three there. And the thing with Adams is I can be critical of him in front of goal. He's a striker that I've said before, I think he takes 3 or 4 chances at least to score. But his all-round play is really good, and I think it's important to credit Adams in terms of his application and work rate. I don't think anyone can question that. At the end of the day, if a footballer isn't producing the goods in terms of finishing or their quality, that's not necessarily something they control. They're only doing their best. But in terms of application and work rate, Adams turns up every single time for Scotland. So I've got no issues with him in that respect. But yeah, I think it's about time he gets a goal against a credible level of opposition, because I looked at his strike rate for Scotland. I think he's got 11 goals and 40 odd caps, and only one of them was against an opponent that I would class as good calibre, and that was that goal he scored against Denmark at Hampden. But Japan I would class as a good opponent, very credible opponent, so he'll be at the World Cup. So it'd be nice to see Adams get a bit of confidence by scoring in this match, because yeah, I looked at his goal record, and the vast majority of his other goals have come against nations like Liechtenstein, Moldova, Luxembourg, teams like that. So yeah, I think it's timely for him to get his name on the score sheet against a good team in Japan. So yeah, there we go. That is my starting 11 for Scotland in this game against Japan. Ahead of Côte d'Ivoire, I would like to see some changes, a bit more experimentation, a bit more of a look in for some of the fringe players. But yeah, for this match, this is the selection I would like to go with. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I look forward to the next video.